Rules are there to protect us, right? Rules in school we learned as children, they were there to protect us. God, in the Old Testament, gave his people rules to protect them physically, protect them spiritually. And we find ourselves now as a society as the Israelites did when they left God and left for other gods. And that's what we see today. Any other comments? Well, in our defense here, we'll move through this quickly, is we can see that sin is defined. 1 John chapter 2, in verse 15, if y'all would read along with me. 1 John chapter 2, verse 15 says, "Do not love the world, nor the things in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. For all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh and the lust of the eyes and the boastful pride of life, is not from the Father, but is from the world. The world is passing away, and also its lusts, but the one who does the will of God lives forever." That's a good reminder to me. It's so easy to get caught up in the things of the world. I mean, you know that. It's so easy to get caught up in some of these arguments that we see people making on social media. And I'll tell you, that's a danger. And that's a temptation to me. You know, I can get on Facebook or Twitter, or whatever it's called, X or something now, or something. You see people making arguments and, oh, how much it infuriates me, and, you know, I want to get in there and I want to give my 2 cents, you know. I'll tell you, from my standpoint, it's better that I don't get involved or engaged in things like that. Because I know myself, you know, I can get into some heated discussions with some folks, and where does that land? I'm not going to change their minds. They're not going to change mine. And I'm probably not demonstrating a good Christian attitude in doing that. It's better to stay away from things like that. But yet we do need to be bold. We do need to stick to our beliefs. We need to teach others. And if there's an opportunity to do so, you know, we absolutely should take that. That's just from my standpoint on things like that. But sin is definitely defined. And all of us are dealing with any of these at any time in our lives, whether it's the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, or the boastful pride of life. We're all have been guilty of that at some time or another. We all face similar temptations. My temptations and what I face maybe on a daily basis might be different from yours, but yet it's all temptations to commit sin, and we know that sin will separate us from God. Any comments? Holiness is defined by God. Did you have something to say?
No.
Oh, okay. Sorry, you look like you were about ready to say something.
No,
Okay. Holiness is defined by God. Turn back a few pages to 1 Peter chapter 1. Verse 15 and 16. Someone want to read that for us?
But as he who calls you is holy, you also be holy in all your conduct, because it is written, "Be holy, for I am holy."
Okay. Now, can we be God? No. He's calling us to holiness. But yet, God knows who we are. He knows that we're creatures who do sin. What is your take on this passage when God is calling us to be holy as He is holy?
Be as close as we can to what
Right.
He is.
Mm-hmm.
Try to mimic what He is.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to do it. I mean, we're going to fail because we're human, but be as close as possible.
Right.
Continue trying.
Another word that we could put in place of holy would be righteous. Okay? Trying to be right. Trying to do what's right. You know, when I've talked a little bit with my boys as they've grown up, and maybe they'll have a problem with something or something they've done wrong, we talk about it, you know, and let's just say, you know what? Do better. Do better. Be better. And I think that goes for all of us. We could there's always room to improve, right? Yes, sir.
To do that, we've got to study the Word.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, Vern.
You finish what you're going to say.
No, go ahead. Go ahead, please.
Well, I think you just have to back up a couple verses in verse 2 or verse 13. It says, "Therefore prepare your minds for action, be sober-minded. Set your hope fully on the grace that will be brought to you at the revelation of Jesus Christ. As obedient children, do not be conformed to the passions of your former ignorance." So, whenever he's talking about being holy, he's saying being singularly focused on what it is you want to accomplish.
Yeah.
Like, the Olympics are coming up, right? And we admire these athletes who dedicate so much time and effort, in their diet and their workouts and all this stuff so that they can achieve a goal.
Right.
Well, that's what he's saying. It's like, use your life to achieve this hope. Not that it's something we earn, but singularly focused upon what it is we want to accomplish. Like, we're going to use our mind or soul or body for just that. And so, telling us to put away the passions of our former ignorance, like, don't listen to what, the world or your temptations or, like, you think of like these guys that are, gymnasts who don't eat dessert, right? Because they're so focused. Saying, don't be pulled away by these things because you're living a life that's set apart for something bigger.
Right. That's a good point. When you mention the Olympics, see, when I read this and think of what you mentioned, I think about how Paul, encourages us as we run a race, right? As we're runners. What does a runner do in a race? Is he shooting to be number 2? Huh? Oh, second place. That's what I'm going for, right? No. They train, they discipline their bodies to win.
And they're not looking around while they're
Right.
running. Like, they're singularly
Right.
focused on the goal.
Are we running to win? That was a point that actually my wife brought up to me because she had read something and she shared that with me, and that just connects so well with what you mentioned, Vern.
Well, in
Yeah.
the next one it says, mine's King James Version, it says, "Be ye holy in all manner of conversation and conduct, in all manner of conversation and conduct." And that tells me, in all manner, not just when we're inside a church building
Mhm.
to worship, but in
Yeah.
all manner of our conduct and our conversation and all aspects of our life, at work and at home. We're trying to be holy and be righteous. And we're instructed to do that, not just
Mhm.
where we're inside the church building. And in all manner is in all things that we do, whether we're in school, whether we're at work, whether we're at the supper table,
Mhm.
whether we're out on the soccer field,
Yeah.
or wherever we are, we're supposed to be practicing and going for righteousness
Mhm.
as God would have us at all times.
That's right.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Well, I was, the humanists are just the opposite. They don't want to focus on something. They'll follow more after that song, "Don't worry, be happy." And that's how they want to live their lives,
Mhm. Yeah.
Not really worrying about anything.
Mitch first, and then go ahead, Mitch.
So when we read these verses about being holy and righteous, when we think back to the fact that we mess up and we sin, and it can be easy to have a mess up, have a mistake, and think, "Oh, done. I can't obtain holiness. I can't obtain righteousness because I've messed up, and so my life is over."
Mhm.
But when we drill it down and look at it on a daily basis, on a battle, we may lose a battle from time to time. We may have a misstep and give into a temptation. But that's one battle in the ultimate war.
Mhm.
And you look at these athletes, yes, they're looking at the grand scheme of things, the overall scope of their ultimate goal of, first in winning state or whatever it might be, whatever sport. But you have to take it down to each game, each play, each step that you take, and that's how they all add up to winning the ultimate sport.
Okay. Good point. Great point. Go ahead, Blake.
Yeah, just building on Mitch's point, we are going to mess up. We are going to lose focus from the race that we're on. And 17 tells us that we can call on the Father who judges impartially. And verse 18 talks about us being freed from the bondage, I guess, of sin, the exile, the ransom. And those are all things that we understand and we have a hope within us. And I think the humanists, they're playing in the realm of that bondage, right? They're only looking at the world from what they can see.
Yeah.
What Brenda was saying, what are you going to do when the world ends? Well, she's preparing for a world that doesn't perish, a world that, is eternal. And the humanist is sort of wrapped up in this idea of bondage and exile and living within parameters that have been defined as being perishable, and they will end. And I think it's our job to look at this and say, well, how can we show that greater path? How can we show that hope? How can we show them that they are in bondage and they need to be liberated by Jesus?
That's true. That's right. I mean, certainly there are people who are definitely ignorant today. And by ignorance, I mean also denying or rejecting, intentionally rejecting God. But there are people who simply don't know, who just don't know. And we've had a lot of different ideas passed here. I think that what was mentioned in what we're looking at in the lives that we're living here, we're talking about spiritual integrity here. That coming here, 2-3 times a week, what are you outside of those 2 or 3 times a week? What are we outside of that? Are we doing good? When I was a little fella, my mom would always say, God's watching what you're doing, right? He's always watching, and that sticks with me. When I'm by myself, he's watching me. There may not be another human around for miles, to see what I'm doing, but God knows, right? Integrity, spiritual integrity, doing what's right because it's right and because that's what God said to do. That says a lot about our characters and about our heart, right? And what's in our heart? Things in our heart come out, right? And people see that. Yes, Joe?
I agree. There are ignorant people, but there's no excuse for being ignorant. We've got everything we need to know the truth.
Right.
So, the Bible says God once weak in ignorance, but no longer.
Right. We have the answer right here. He's given it to us. Yeah.
And that's very, very important, is as we're defining holiness, God gives us the definition. The tendency is to redefine what God has said. You go back to an earlier lesson of the new hermeneutics, to redefine what God says to accomplish what we want to do. And so the sense of morality is where God explains it perfectly in His Word, that we say, well, He didn't really mean it that way. What happened to Eve?
Right.
That is, holiness was defined by God. The evil, the serpent came in and redefined that, and look what happened.
And that leads into the choice between good and evil. The next point, what happened in Genesis 3? The temptation, right? The fall, right? Was it all Eve's fault? Huh? Adam tried to blame her, right? But Adam made a choice. Doesn't matter what Eve did to influence him. He made that choice. And he could have made a different choice, to obey God rather than give in to that temptation.
And there was a compelling argument that was made for the other. You can be like God.
Right.
Just think about that. You know, They knew God personally. They walked in the cool of the evening, with God. And you can be like that. I can just see don't you want that?
Mm-hmm.
And she fell. And then Adam fell to that argument, which was evil.
Right. I mean, and look at today. I mean, it's no different today, right? People think of themselves as their own gods, right? We've had examples of that in the Bible. People who think they know better than God. Vanity of pleasure seeking. What book in the Old Testament talks about vanity? Ecclesiastes. Right. So, okay, we are not going to get to our scenario today. But that's good. No, the discussion is great, and appreciate everyone's comments. Pleasure seeking. Do we have a problem with that today?
That's the whole world today. That's all it says.
Wow. Yeah.
That's the message.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
guess to go back just a tiny bit to it's the story we've heard since we were two, right?
Yeah.
And it seems very simple and basic and all that, but there's several layers to the onion on that. And if you think about it, the temptation to eat the fruit was, I mean, on its surface, it is what it was. And he told them, don't eat this. And it's the tree of knowledge of good and evil. But whenever he said, you'll be like God, that was, in a way, that is humanism, right? It is like what Eve and what Adam ultimately decided is I can either just stay in fellowship with God, listen to what he says, or I can define for myself what evil is.
Right.
Right? It's up to me to decide. I will know. And so, I mean, that is like all the things that we just read in the Humanist Manifesto. That is
Right.
that. Right? It is deciding, this is, like, I'm going to decide for myself what is good and evil.
Exactly. That's right. I mean, yeah. I mean, they're teaching us today, and what humanism is teaching is we are the end-all, beat-all of existence. There's nothing outside of human existence. And that what we establish, what we believe, and what we live, that's it. We know better, though, and we wish,
That we're talking about,
yeah.
these societal problems that we have, what it boils down to is people are saying, well, I know the Bible says this, but that disagrees with what I already think.
Right.
So I'm going to reject God.
Right.
And so what have you done? You've eaten of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. You said, I'm going to do what I want to do, not what I'm not going to submit anything to God.
Right.
That's humanism at its core.
Yeah, they just will not yield themselves to something greater than them, that they just disagree. Well, that doesn't fit my lifestyle, or I disagree with that. And they're not willing to understand why God said what he said. And simply because God knew it's best for us and knows it's best for us, spiritually speaking. And that's what God has, this vision, and he is able to see spiritually, according to his will, what's best for us. What's his ultimate goal?
Get us that.
Right.
To be with him.
And to get as many people in the world to heaven. That's what he wants us to be saved. He doesn't want people to be lost. Certainly not. And oftentimes I wonder, we see things that happen in the world, and just the violence, the destruction, the ugliness, the cruelty. We're like, what in the world is the Lord waiting for? You ever ask yourself that? Why hasn't he come yet? You ever wonder that?
Because he's gracious and patient and wants to give us more of a chance.
Exactly. And the lost, so that they would come to him, but also us too. Rob Mann might be stuck in something really ugly right now. Maybe he's waiting for Rob to correct some things in his life. You know? Yeah. Any other comments?
I find it interesting that, the first sin starts with being told a lie. And Eve had never heard a lie before, ever, you know. So how could she judge between whether that was truth or not, because she had never heard a lie?
That's right. That's right. You know,
Why would someone do that? Her concept,
Yeah.
everything was true.
you know, my impression is, and I don't know this for a fact, and I don't know the scriptures teach this, but you know, I sometimes think of Adam and Eve were like children. And they didn't know. And all they needed to know was to trust God and be committed to him. I mean, simple as that. Now, what's happening today, right? What's happening to our children today?
Well, humanism is a lie that's being told.
Right.
Everybody.
Right. Okay. Thank you so much for your comments. When we start off next week, we're going to get into our scenario. We're going to split up into groups, and we're going to get that done and then move on in our study. So thank you all very much. Thank you.